Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello. Oh, what happened there?
Oh, how'd that happen?
We're switched.
I didn't do it.
I can't fix us.
I didn't touch nothing.
I didn't touch nothing. This is weird. We're gonna have to cancel the show. I can't do it like this. It's not. Come on.
Well, that's appropriate. We were coming out as libertarians today, right?
Yeah,
so
right. Exactly.
It's kind of switched.
We're switched. We're all switched. How did it get switched? And I can't even fix it. Well, I hope the show works. Anyway.
All right. Please welcome our first guest, Daryl Cooper.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. The upside down bizarro dissidents today. Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a Tuesday matinee edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular. We've switched places today.
Really? You can't put it back?
I can't put it back. It's not responding.
I think we're going to have to cancel.
Yeah.
I don't think we could do the show this way.
This is bizarre. All righty. Well, that's
I am literally to Keaton's left today.
I know he's to my left today. Usually, Russell always gets, Russell is, traditionally the brown part of the red-brown alliance, and I'm the red. So I'm on the left and he's on the right. But today we are reversed. We will make do. It is seriously disorienting. I'm not even joking. Like, I'm half joking, but I'm not.
I can't. I feel like I have to take off my jack boots.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right, exactly. Russell needs a wardrobe change, and we'll come back.
I need a wardrobe change, yes.
All right, folks. We've got a couple of program notes. The final two segments of the day have to do with Sudan and Ukraine, which are both war zones, which means to cover them the way we need to today, we're going to have to cover them on Rumble, not for any guideline violations, but in case we don't want the stream to get age restricted, in case anything is too violent. We're not going to go crazy, but we will show some things that might get it age restricted here on YouTube. So we are going to switch to Rumble for the final two segments of the show today. And those are great segments. So come over there with us, please.
Yeah, where I must say, I did a big piece on Jimmy's last year about Sudan, and we really wanted to commit to staying on that story. And to my shame, we haven't. It's I thought about why that is. You really have to look for it. It's kind of a vicious circle. Like, it's a criminally undercovered humanitarian catastrophe. And because it's undercovered, it doesn't come up on our radar a lot, because it's not a lot of time when we're putting together the show, we're looking at our news feed. It's not in your news feed. That's part of the problem. And it should be. So yes, please come over for that segment. We're going to be on Jimmy's next week. I will do a segment there about it to draw more attention as well.
Yes, and those clips will drop to YouTube tomorrow, so we will get them on the YouTube side, but we just are not going to cover them live here for those reasons. All right, we got to jump right in. Oh, wait a minute. Is that why? No, it's not why. Anyway, I give up. All right.
So I mean, why can't you put it back? Because this has happened before, and you just
I don't know.
Pressed a button, and we just went back.
What are you going to do? I don't know. But anyway, we are going to get started right now because we have a very special guest joining us.
I don't even think she's going to want to do it like this.
Yeah, right. We'll see if she's still good to go on. Very special guest joining us today. She is, of course, the former Seattle City Council member and founder of Workers Strike Back. And as of yesterday, She is a candidate for Washington's 9th District running against incumbent Democrat Congressman Adam Smith. You all know Kshama Sawant. Welcome, Kshama, back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Like I said, you launched your campaign for U.S. Congress yesterday. Very exciting day. The Seattle Times, I'm sure they felt great to hear from you again. You're not a thorn in the side of the establishment of the media there in Seattle at all. Seattle socialist Kshama Sawant to run for Congress against Adam Smith. We streamed your press conference, so here is a short clip from that, you making it official.
Is urgently needed nationally, including in the U.S. Congress. Progressive Democrats like AOC and Bernie Sanders have long since capitulated to the corporate and warmongering agenda of their party. Working people need elected representatives willing to use their positions to build mass movements in order to end the genocide and all U.S. military funding to the Israeli state, defeat the attacks on public funds for our basic needs, and win offensive demands like free healthcare for all, like by taxing the rich, or Medicare for all, and a $25 an hour minimum wage. This is why I launched Workers' Strike Back. This is also why I am running for Congress against Democrat Adam Smith. Just as I used my city council election campaigns to build momentum for the $15 minimum wage and the Amazon tax, I will use my congressional election campaign to help build the anti-war movement and to launch a historic fight for Medicare for all. And just as I did in my decade as a representative of working people in Seattle, if I'm elected to Congress, I will accept only the average worker's wage and donate the rest of my six-figure salary to workers and social justice movements.
All right, so there you are, making your campaign announcement official. Now, spoilers, everybody. We kind of did know of this in advance because we know you guys had been talking about this for a bit. And you are not only launching a campaign for Congress, but you're doing something that I think is a really great idea, which is launching this candidacy alongside a sort of ballot initiative, Medicare for All campaign in Seattle. So the microphone is yours. You can explain your campaign, that dual-pronged strategy, in whatever order you'd like.
Yes, we've seen the context in which we are living, where on the one hand, there is enormous historic levels of anger among tens of millions of American working people about the state of the society they live in, the anger against genocide, anger at the cost of living crisis, anger at the fact that the rich are getting richer and working people's lives are getting worse by the day. And yet at the same time that there is so much anger, you have a situation where Democrats and Republicans control all the levers of power in Washington, D.C., and they serve the interests of the billionaires. And we know that both are warmongering parties down to their bones. And so it's a situation of impasse where you have outright corporate politicians, many of them just overtly right-wing, and then you have a section of Democrats who call themselves progressives, but then they end up giving cover to the real agenda of the Democratic Party, which is pro-Wall Street, pro-war. And so in a sense, they actually serve a purpose for the billionaire class. And my decade as a socialist on the Seattle City Council is a complete contrast to this. As I said in my speech yesterday, we completely flipped the script on what it means to be an elected representative. So if you're serving working class people, you don't go there, you don't go into the halls of office, whether it's City Hall or US Congress, thinking that you are going to go there to administer the capitalist state, except you'll be a little bit nicer, you'll have better intentions, and then you'll do behind the scenes negotiations with other politicians, especially the biggest power broker politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these people. And then you'll have meetings with lobbyists for big business, the US Chamber of Commerce, but then you'll try to eke out some crumbs here and there. But the overall agenda, the massive agenda of attacks on working people, of wars abroad, that goes on unabated. we completely rejected this idea. And in fact, I recognized when I first got elected in 2013 that I am taking this office in service of working people, which means for me, it meant going to war on behalf of working people against the attacks by the Democratic Party, and also against the strenuous opposition that we would encounter from the Democrats, from, in the case of Seattle, the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. And despite taking that hard route, we won again and again. And in fact, I would say that tragically for the working class, this is the only example of actual historic victories that have provoked, once we have won them, attacks from the ruling class to try and dismantle them. They haven't succeeded yet. And that's also an important story we should cover today, because we've just won a recent victory. In any case, when I ran the campaign in city council for city council in 2013, we campaigned on $15 an hour. In other words, as the Seattle Times itself was forced to admit, I mean, they're not our fans, as you were indicating. The Seattle Times editorial board absolutely hates anything and everything I stand for. But they were forced to admit that my campaign in 2013 was, if anything, a referendum on $15 an hour. We defeated at that time a 16-year incumbent, the most powerful Democrat, arguably, at that time. He was the president of the council, and nobody thought we could do this. And nobody thought we could win 15. It was dismissed as utopian. And yet we won that. And unlike the Squad and other progressives, I've kept my promises. We also won the Amazon tax to fund affordable housing, which raises hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And we showed that it is possible to defeat Amazon even on their home turf. We won a slew of renters' rights victories. And this whole program of victories that we won in Seattle, these are humongous victories that have sent the Wall Street interests, Jeff Bezos himself, other billionaires, the corporate landlords, it has sent them all into an uproar. And every next campaign that I had, they spent more and more money to try and defeat us, but they completely failed. We won 4 elections. One of them was winning against a recall that was attempted against us to throw me out of office, but they completely failed. And so all of this strategy, it's unfortunately missing basically anywhere else in the United States. And that's a big reason why we have launched this platform, because we think that we need this type of unambiguous fight back for working class people against the genocide in the US Congress. And I just so happen to live in the district of Congressmember Adam Smith, who is a general among the war hawks. He has not met a war that he didn't like. He has blood all over his hands. He has been in Congress since 1997. He has voted for wars in Kosovo, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, and the current bloody inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine. He has called left-wing activists, anti-genocide activists, extremists, and left-wing fascists. He has called for them to be arrested. He has likened their actions to the far-right attack on the US Capitol. And he is a treasure as far as weapons industry and Wall Street interests are concerned. And, and the health insurance industry is notable among his contributors. And so I think that if we are to really fight against the genocide, fight to end the genocide, we need this type of campaign to thoroughly expose somebody like Adam Smith. Adam Smith is a darling of AIPAC and the Zionist lobby, the weapons industry. As I said, AIPAC was his biggest funder last year, and he has received nearly $500,000 from the Zionist lobby to date. And also another notable thing is that he has received already for his campaign next year, he has received the maximum amount from Alexander Karp, who is the CEO of Palantir. It's just one of the most dystopian individuals, I think, in existence.
Yeah, people forget Alex Karp is a Democrat historically. People, he's the pro-Trump oligarch. No, not really. He was a Democrat. These tech people, they just go where the power is. They are completely malleable. They have no ideology, no humanity whatsoever. So yeah, that is a formidable opponent there. It's funny because a lot of people, when because people think you're from Seattle, they think, well, you must be running against Pramila Jayapal, but you're actually running against one of the most conservative House Democrats.
Oh yeah. This guy has a long track record. I mean, he voted for the Patriot Act in 2011. I mean, probably a lot of your viewers are very young and they don't even know what the Patriot Act was, but that was one of the starting points of this massive attacks on not only the civil rights of ordinary people, but just sort of wholesale detentions and attacks on immigrant community members. That was a George W. Bush project. This guy supported it. And then in 2002, he voted for the Iraq War. In 2003, he voted for, in 2008, I believe, he voted for the bailouts of the big banks. And then that was under Bush. And then under Obama, he voted for the continuing of the bailouts of the big banks while ordinary people were being screwed. So this guy has a long track record of being just an arch representative of big business and of the war industry.
Okay, so you mentioned this in your previous answer, but we're here with Kshama Sawant, who is running for Congress, and one of the things that I think has always made me a fan of yours long before I got to know you is your record of success as an independent candidate, divorced from duopoly politics, and you are celebrating one of these successes today. That's June 3rd, a victory rally. We defeated Democrats and corporate landlords, hands off our renters' rights. So I read the press release in the email that you sent. I won't read it again since you're here to talk about it. But you have had to basically, as a citizen out of office, had to mobilize the same coalition that propelled you to the city council in the first place to protect a lot of the gains that you made, because with you not there, obviously, I'm not just saying this to flatter you. There's no replacement for you. It's like when Derek Jeter left the Yankees, they couldn't really fill those shoes very easily. So you have to mobilize people to protect those gains. And it seems like you're celebrating one of those successes today. So do you want to talk about that?
Yes, as you said, the victory rally is today. It's at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So if you're watching this and you're in Seattle, you can come to Seattle downtown. City Hall is in downtown at the corner of 4th and James. Please join us at 1 p.m. for the victory rally. This was an attempted attack by the Democrats against our renters' rights. And, keep in mind, for those of you who don't know about Seattle, Seattle is a very blue city, meaning it's very pro-democratic city. It's not a Republican-oriented city in any way. It is the city hall itself is all Democrat. The mayor is a Democrat. All the 9 council members are Democrats. The only aberration was when I was on city council for 10 years, I was the lone socialist and working class representative on it. Again, at that time, all the 8 others were Democrats. And so, as you said, Keaton, it wasn't even that I was out of office. In fact, the Chamber of Commerce and landlords actually started their attacks ever since we won $15 an hour. After we won $15 an hour, after we won Amazon tax, after we won any particular renters' rights victory, and of which we have won many, like a $10 cap on late rent fee, the economic evictions assistance, where the landlords are legally mandated to provide 3 months rent, pay 3 months rent to any tenant they evict by a rent increase of 10% or more. This is unheard of. These laws are unheard of. Ban on winter evictions, ban on
New York, you just got to up and leave. That happens, you have a few weeks to get out of there, and that's it.
Exactly.
However, it's a years-long process to evict here.
Well, yeah, if they actually want to force you out, but yeah,
that's true. But it is an absolutely horrific experience to go through, and then the eviction stays on your record. It is a
right.
Yeah, you don't want to force them into that for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We also won a ban on evictions of school children and public school workers during a school year. All these were massive fights, and the way we won, exactly as you were saying, by mobilizing working people, by mobilizing union members, and then forcing the union leaderships to support these demands. And that's how we won. And then every time we won any of them, we had lawsuits directed against them. None of those lawsuits has ever won. I have lost count of the lawsuits that have been directed against me personally. for my efforts and against the laws that we won. Not one of them has succeeded. And so now what they tried to do after I left city council, in 2023, I didn't run for re-election because I'm building this organization, Nationally Workers Strike Back. After that, the city council, which is, again, as I said, all Democrat, they openly pledged. I mean, they were so full of hubris. They openly said they were going to revisit $15 an hour and also the minimum wage victory that we won, which is now $20.76. It's the highest minimum wage in the nation because we also won inflation increases. And then also the renters' rights. I mean, the city council openly declared we're going to go after renters' rights. And then the first step that they had to do was to severely water down the city's ethics laws, because some of the council members are landlords, and the ethics laws prevent them from voting on renters' rights bills because only 3% of the city is a landlord, and so ethics demand that you can't actually. Then you're clearly benefiting from that law, from dismantling renters' rights law. So they are not allowed to vote. So the first step was to try and dismantle ethics laws. And this is what they do, and this is what you'll see with Adam Smith as well. When you see these laws that are actually literally transporting weapons to carry out a genocide, or literally to have bailouts for big banks and completely sell out working people, millions of whom are going through foreclosures, renters being denied their basic protections. When all of these things happen, if you look at the language of those legislation, they are all stated in such lengthy technocratic terminology. Ordinary people won't even know that this is what's happening. So we, alongside some local journalists, we were able to expose that actually this dismantling of the ethics laws is actually in the interest of corporate landlords to ultimately remove the renters' protections that we have won. And so Workers Strike Back mobilized hundreds of people to City Hall relentlessly. And it's not just about going to City Hall. It's about understanding how the balance of power needs to be shifted. And so, this is where the real political clarity that we have brought forward is so unique, is that it's not only about building, mobilizing people. Yes, that is rare enough. AOC has never mobilized people. If she had done that even one time, she would have been a bigger threat to the Democratic establishment, but she has refused to do that. So even that doesn't happen. But even when you do that, that is not enough. It is about understanding that you have to completely overturn the narrative of respectability, politics, and decorum. So when you go into City Hall, though all the rules that are imposed on you as an ordinary person, a member of the public, those rules are to protect the elected officials who are attacking the rights of working people. So in other words, they say, don't go over your time. Don't impugn the intentions. They literally tell you, don't impugn the intentions of any individual elected official. Everybody is trying to do their best. Just say what you want nicely. Don't chant. Don't, so it is a crucial part of working class fight back to clearly reject all of that. And that is what we did. We not only mobilized hundreds of people, which of course we did, but what we did was politically educate everyone that when you're going there, these city council members, they are not your friends. They are your enemies. They are not trying to weaken these ethics laws because they're somehow dumb and they're just confused about things. No, they are doing this specifically at the behest of the corporate landlords who have bankrolled them. And you have to call them out by name. So we called each council member out by name. We called out Sarah Nelson, who's the president and the most conservative member of the council, which, by the way, and who, by the way, was endorsed by Adam Smith, just for another side tidbit there. We called out Kathy Moore by name, who was the sponsor of that legislation. We called each one of them by name, and we said they need to be thrown out. You, Kathy Moore, need to be thrown out. You, Sarah Nelson, need to be thrown out. We chanted in chambers. We literally said, who's favored by corporate landlords? It's Sarah Nelson, Kathy Moore. Who needs to be thrown out? Sarah Nelson, Kathy Moore. We chanted this. We marched in chambers. We literally turned it into a picket site, and we forced the Democrats to feel completely out of control. They had no control over their own city council meeting. We forced them to repeatedly retreat into their private offices and continue the meeting over Zoom. And as they were leaving the dais, we chanted, cowards, cowards, cowards. This is the kind of pressure we put on them. We publicized widely what they were doing. And in each subsequent meeting, more new people came in because they said, well, I didn't even know this was happening, and now I'm here. And so it was that kind of pressure that forced them to, Kathy Moore, the sponsor of the legislation, forced the whole city council to back off on that. And then, two things are notable here. One is that in that process of our fight back, not only did we force them to retreat, we forced them to end up having infighting amongst themselves because they were so completely out of control, out of any control of this meeting. They started blaming each other for the fact that they lost control. Like, hey, Sarah Nelson, you're not doing this right. So that is what you need to do. The working class needs to provoke infighting among the ruling class, because when they're united, it is worse for us. And then the other thing is that right after announcing that she's withdrawing the legislation, Kathy Moore announced that she's resigning from city council altogether.
Wow, there you go. Well, that sounds like a fun party. In an hour and 20 minutes, you're gonna go. So congratulations. Yeah, I mean, that's how it's done. You've talked about bringing that sort of activist spirit and that activist energy and that activist practice to the office at City Council, and that's obviously the plan as a member of Congress. Russ, did you want to say anything or go to the next piece, or whatever you want?
Well, we'll go to the next piece.
Okay, sure. Do you want to talk about a little bit about Zohran Mamdani, the mayor's race, because he's running as a Democrat, proposing some of these things? Go ahead, Russell.
Okay.
Let me know if you need help, because I know you're technically challenged over there.
Yeah, so I'm watching it through the studio, but there's a lag, but I think it'll work.
We'll do our best.
So from the capitalist hellscape of Seattle to the socialist utopia of New York City,
right.
We just had the United Auto Workers. We have ranked choice voting here for anyone who doesn't know. So they ranked Zohran Mamdani number 1, Brad Lander, who's desperately trying to get in there as the less radical but not as perverted and responsible for killing the elderly as Andrew Cuomo candidate, and number 3, Jessica Ramos, who nobody seems to be backing. So this was this week, the UAW came out and made their formal endorsement of Mamdani. This is the video that they put out.
There are other speakers. We'll talk about the 15,000 seniors that died in New York State nursing homes due to COVID and the serious missteps of the Cuomo administration. I'm not here to talk about that. I'm sure other speakers will discuss the multiple sexual harassment charges brought against former Governor Cuomo, but that's not what I'm here to talk about either. I'm here to tell you that when United Auto Workers needed Governor Cuomo's help, he turned his back on us.
Our members want a better, safer, and more affordable city. Someone who passes up the opportunities to support workers in a time of crisis, that person is unfit to be mayor of working class New Yorkers.
Our membership across the country went out on strike.
Mamdani was asked at a forum about how he will pay for his policies, the eternal question, right? He has some proposals like free bus service, which honestly, during COVID, That became a de facto policy for a pretty long time, for like a couple of years. You could just walk on the bus. It was like unofficial. And then Adams, when he came in, he started enforcing the law again. But this is what he says about some of that in affordable housing.
Some of the things I've heard that are part of your platform: a rent freeze.
Yep.
200,000 new affordable homes to build.
There we go.
$30 minimum wage by 2030. Free buses. And then city-owned grocery stores. I'm just wondering, because obviously, like, politicians are liars. So
true.
How can we trust that these things are achievable?
So these are all things that are a question of political will. Because most politicians will try and tell us that anytime you want to stand up for working class people, it's unrealistic. And when we're talking about a rent freeze, Bill de Blasio did that 3 times. There's precedence for that. When we're talking about city-run grocery stores, that pilot program, which would guarantee lower prices for milk, for eggs, for bread, for the staples of day-to-day life, would cost $60 million. The city is currently set to spend more than $140 million to give it to corporate supermarkets. So this would be a fraction of what we're already set to spend. When we're talking about free buses and universal childcare, that is something that we could pay for entirely by raising New York State's corporate tax rate to match the socialist utopia of New Jersey. So that's 7.25% here to 11.5% there. 200,000 affordable homes. We can pay for this by municipal bonding. We can pay for this by using vouchers that landlords are rejecting for New Yorkers that are already approved. We can pay for this by using vacant city lots that we have. And we're already paying for this in some way because our refusal to build actually affordable housing, like for a family of 4 making $72K a year, for a low-income senior, for one of the 100,000 New Yorkers living in shelters, it is pushing working class people outside of the city. It is pushing them into tax bases of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We need to stop doing that and actually keep people in the city they call home.
So, okay, saying all the right things, but I must say this is what's been interesting about this campaign. For one thing, outside of New York, I know you don't think this, but a lot of people think New York is this lefty city. It's a Rockefeller Republican city. It is the epitome of the neoliberal vision of socially liberal and economically deeply conservative. It is the home of Wall Street. Now, Mamdani is doing better. He was originally at 2 to 5%. Now he's down 8 points under Cuomo. That in and of itself is a statement, I think, on the character of New York politics, that he's not beating Cuomo by 35 points. Cuomo is a sex criminal who literally killed people's grandparents during COVID by taking a bribe from the hospital lobby and then writing legislation that allowed them to evade responsibility for their conduct during the crisis. And yet he's still leading. Where I've really seen a change from when we became involved in the Sanders campaign years ago. Nobody gives a shit. Honestly, I am not seeing anyone in our space talk about this guy. I think if this had been even 5 years ago, there would have been an enormous push in our space and among our peers to really push this guy over the top. I think people have been so burned and so disillusioned by the electoral process, particularly running within the Democratic Party, that they don't want to waste their time pushing this guy to lose by 3% in a city where, particularly in New York City, the Democratic primary voters are garbage. I mean, nationwide, they're garbage. But in New York, they're garbage plus. They're really the proverbial dumpster fire. How do you, now you're running as an independent, do you think that gives you more credibility? And what would you say? Should people, some people say, well, you know, vote for the person who best represents your values, you know, lesser of two evils. Do you think it's worthwhile for people to invest in a campaign like Mamdani's, where he's saying the right things, even though he's running within the Democratic primary? And do you feel that running as an independent, as you are, is really the only way to challenge the establishment?
Well, first of all, you know, in mathematics and logic, you have this necessary and sufficient condition type of thing. So a necessary condition for achieving anything for working class people through elected office is to be independent of the Democratic and Republican. If you're not even doing that, then forget about it, because all the Democratic Party is where all the good intentions go to die a horrible death.
Right.
So if you're not willing to understand that, because I mean, and I'm not speaking about Mamdani because I don't know him personally. I don't know what's in his head. I don't know that. But I'm making a general statement because statistically it is so overwhelmingly true. It is safe to say this about any individual as well, in the sense that if in this day and age, after all the betrayals by the squad, by AOC specifically, by the fact that Bernie Sanders had no hesitation in endorsing a genocider in chief, Biden, and then uncritically supporting Harris. After all this has happened, after the way that the Democratic Party completely crushed Bernie's campaigns twice, not just once, after all this, if you're still going to run as a Democrat, then it really begs the question of how serious you might be, even with all the good intentions in the world. How serious are you strategically to achieve any of the campaign platform that Mamdani is talking about? So
what about the argument? The response you'll usually get to that is you can't do anything if you don't win, and you can't win as an independent.
But look at us. We won every election we ran for the city council. And was it easy? No, it was as I said before, every election was harder than the last one. And what we did with our working class campaign is we broke the records of fundraising in this city. Even up to this point, our fundraising is now the record in the city historically. So we did that with an independent socialist working class campaign. And I was talking about necessary and sufficient conditions because I think it is important to understand what it takes. And it directly goes to your question, Russell. Do you need to run independent? Yes. First of all, bottom line is you need to be independent of the Democratic and Republican parties. If you're not willing to do that, then it's sort of a non-starter. But the reason I'm framing it this way is that it's not sufficient just to say you're independent either, because there have been some independents, who've run in city council or state legislature elections, not in U.S. Congress, obviously. But what we've seen is that at the end of the day, it's not enough to say you're independent of the Democrats and Republicans, and then generally, when you win elected office, to generally make peace with them, again, be willing to maybe speak for crumbs, but overall not rock the apple cart of U.S. capitalism. That doesn't work at all. What do you have to do? I mean, it's a tall order, which is why it is so rare. And as I said, it's tragic that we are the only example, but it's also, material analysis of capitalism tells you why it is so rare. It's because it takes a lot to be that move, and you have to be based in movements, because you can't do this alone. With the best of integrity and the best of strategic brains or whatever, it doesn't come down to one individual. You obviously need that individual who's elected to have a spiny, steely spine. Without that, you can't get it. But what I'm saying is, again, that's not enough. With that steely spine has to come your ability to build movements, because that is what strikes fear in the hearts of the ruling class. And so I unfortunately don't see any of this happening with this campaign, with Zoran Mamdani's campaign. He's running as a Democrat in the first place. I mean, it's good on him to raise these demands. I mean, most politicians don't even talk about demands because they don't want to be on the hook for any of that. Even labor leaders do this. Labor leaders always say, no, we can't, when it comes to contract fights, they don't even call it a fight. They call it negotiation. They talk about the bargaining table. They say the words bargaining table about 1,000 times. And they say, let's not pick a specific wage increase we want. Let's just talk about it. That's because they don't want to be held on the hook by their own members and then pilloried when they fail to achieve it. We are the opposite. We start with a demand and then we fight to win it. And so good on him for raising those demands. But again, it's a real question that how is he going to achieve any of this? First of all, running inside the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party is completely ruthless on the side of Wall Street interests. And as you said,
especially here.
Especially here. Yeah,
Wall Street is literally here.
I mean, yes, exactly. Wall Street is literally in New York City. And and to your point, I mean, just to one thing to clarify, I mean, yes, it is a Rockefeller city and all. I totally agree with you, Russell. I just wanted to say that there are more than enough millions of working people who would agree with our politics if we had
Oh yes.
a campaign running. So I just mean that
they're not. Yeah, they're not. We really saw that. I campaigned in Harlem for Bernie, and you know what? It should not have surprised people that Trump made such inroads with the black community if any of them had gone out into the black community and talked to people, because I must say, I probably talked to more young black men who were into Trump, in fact, not probably, definitely, than that were interested in Hillary. And in general, this is 2016, most of them didn't even really know about Bernie in the area. So that was no surprise to me that he did as well as he did just from seeing that on the ground. When we went out and campaigned for Jose Vega in the Bronx, yeah, people are much further left from the than the Democratic Party,
they are. I mean,
but they're not engaged in the electoral process.
Yeah, and why should they be? Why should they be? Nobody's offering anything to them. I mean, look at this Cuomo guy. I mean, aside from being sexual harassment criminal and all of that, look at this is actually an article from the New York Times, surprisingly, from June 1st, just from Sunday. It says the business interest bankrolling Andrew Cuomo's run for mayor. I mean, it is stunning. $250,000 came from, this is the opening line of the article, $250,000 came from the head of Suffolk Construction, a Boston-based builder getting big on a New York City expansion. Another $150,000 from the chairman of Vornado Realty Trust, who is searching for a way to revive a stalled Midtown Manhattan redevelopment. He calls it the promised land. DoorDash, severely exploitative corporation. They have given him a staggering $1 million. I mean, I could go on and on. This is a who's who of big business interests that are donating to
him. Sure.
It's insane.
Well, this is a question I would have, because to me, when you look at the video of the UAW saying don't rank Cuomo, this is something that I'm not sure if it's a trend nationwide. You tell me the way it looks in Seattle. A few years ago, it would be inconceivable that these unions wouldn't just line up one by one by one behind an entrenched establishment figure like an Andrew Cuomo when he ran for mayor, just like they lined up in 2016. I believe the teachers union didn't even take a vote. They endorsed Hillary Clinton before they even voted, right?
Yeah,
so it's almost inconceivable that you would see these major unions rejecting Cuomo in that way.
Yeah, just to that, we were talking about this earlier. This is very late for the teachers union to have not endorsed anybody. The teachers union is a Democratic Party establishment appendage. Right. I think they're in a really tough spot because it's a very gynocentric union, and Andrew Cuomo, the de facto establishment candidate, is a sex criminal. I think that's why they haven't endorsed yet. They don't know what the hell to do. They're not going to endorse a brown socialist. No way. But they can't really endorse Andrew Cuomo. It's interesting. I think they wind up endorsing Lander.
Well, maybe. Well, but see, this is the thing. Like, it's hard to know if this is a trend because Cuomo himself is so especially odious for all these other reasons.
Right.
But it does seem like the plummeting of the Democratic Party brand since the 2024 defeat has created a lot of question marks in these types of scenarios where previously there were none. In years past, it's a given the major unions back the establishment Democrat candidate. Out in Seattle, do you see a similar distrust in Democratic politics among people who would normally just as a given flock in that direction? And does that create an opportunity for your campaign, obviously, to scoop some of them in?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and again, I think there's a real class divide on that as well. Like, so if you look at more low income and working class people, they are quite disenchanted from both parties in general. I mean, they're not sort of, and it's a little bit like Russell was describing, they're sort of checked out of electoral politics because why should they bother? Everybody betrays them, that type of thing. But then they know us. They know that we have never betrayed. They know that we have won victories. And so that is something that they are excited about. I mean, we're seeing a phenomenal excitement. I mean, it's not even been a day since we announced our campaign, and already we're getting messages from all over the region that they are super excited about this. And there are people who are posting messages also who are saying that I don't think there's any campaign I would be excited about, but this is the one thing that I'm going to make an exception for. That type of thing, which reflects their complete disdain, appropriately so, of the two parties. And I think that for us in a blue city and a blue state, I think it's both things. I mean, one, you see a whole lot of people who are completely disenchanted by both parties and want a fight back. There are also people who identify as Democratic Party supporters, but they also want a fight back. So it's like, and to be clear, even this is like, we're talking about 2013, so consciousness was very different then. Right now, the Democratic Party's approval ratings are in the toilet. That wasn't the same in 2013. And at that time, a lot of Democratic Party, so-called the pundits, they told me, well, if you want to win, then you have to run as a Democrat because nobody's going to vote for a socialist. But that wasn't true. My point is that even then, there were people who identified as Democrats, but they were fed up with the Democratic Party doing nothing for them, and they voted for us. And in fact, we would not have, statistically speaking, we would not have won any election had we not understood how to win over people who otherwise their habit is to support the Democratic Party, is to by clarifying to them, like, who is actually going to fight for a higher minimum wage, or to hold corporate landlords responsible for, accountable for what's happened, who is going to fight for renters' rights, who is going to fight against climate change, that type of thing. And in this race, I think it is very clear. There is nothing policy related, or there is nothing ambiguous. There is no technical points anybody needs to understand. This is straight up about genocide. Here is a genocide enabler, one of the chief genocide enablers, and we are somebody who has a track record of fighting against Israeli aggression. It's not only that I've been against a genocide, which of course I am. I have a long track record of opposing Israeli attacks on the Palestinian people and opposing the Israeli occupation. And that whole 12-year period, Adam Smith was egging them on. Adam Smith was promoting Israeli military aggression on the Palestinians. So it's making it very clear which side you're on, and making whether or not you want to vote for the Democrat, making that less of a thing for people who otherwise feel very loyal to the Democratic Party. Although I also agree that statistically speaking, that contingent is smaller and smaller because of the way the Democrats are selling people out.
All right, I got one more question because I know you have an event, and it came in from a big super chat. But I promise, Landrew, this is not a bribe, so don't get any ideas, folks, in the chat, because Shama's going to leave. But I was going to ask you this as well. So he says, what was the event that triggered your interest in running for office, Kshama? And I was going to ask you that as well because, you step back from your position on the city council, and then you start this movement, Workers Strike Back. And now you jump right back into the electoral politics game, which, again, I'm grateful for. I think it's a great idea, especially doing it alongside this Medicare for All campaign. Was there a triggering event that said, okay, I have to get back in right now and run for Congress, as opposed to the more, I don't want to say dragged out, but the more gradual, incremental approach of movement building towards a new party?
First of all, just to answer this question, I have to clarify that it's not my personal decision. I mean, it's a fundamental building block of what makes us a completely a unique example of what working people need, is because the starting point is never what should I do. The starting point for us, meaning the elected leadership of Workers Strike Back and the Workers Strike Back members who are active in building this organization, has always been, what is the best vehicle for us for organizing campaigns that will mobilize people. See, that's another thing that differentiates us from many organizations. I mean, basically every other organization on the left, talk about DSA or any number of so-called Marxist organizations and so on. What they will do is, first of all, they don't actually want to launch any specific campaigns. It's always just showing up at different political events and then sharing their literature, which we also do. But that is not the only thing we do. We recognize that actually, if you want to harness the bubbling anger against society, in society, against the rich, against the genocide, then you can't just do it in the abstract. You have to have a campaign vehicle in order to do that. And so our starting point was, obviously, the anger against the health insurance industries is at a peak. Something absolutely needs to be done. And in fact, that is a bigger obligation. That is a really big obligation, not only because there's that anger, but because also the fact that that anger is allowing the Democrats like Pramila Jayapal and Bernie Sanders to pose as, oh, they're going to do something about Medicare for all. Are you serious? Trump is in the White House. Both the houses of Congress are dominated by Republicans, and now you bring Medicare for all? What in the world happened to Medicare for all when Biden was in the White House and the Democrats had majorities in both houses of Congress? So, we can't actually expose what they are doing unless we are launching a campaign ourselves for free public health care by taxing the rich. And we're not just saying Medicare for all. We're saying free public health care for everyone in Seattle, regardless of immigration status, and which will be funded by taxing the rich. In other words, we already have won the Amazon tax. We're talking about expanding the Amazon tax to $5 billion to fund free public health care for all. And so that was our starting point in many ways, launching a campaign on the most, in our view, the most electrifying demand. But obviously for us, the demand, it's not an offensive demand, but it is a crucial demand, and probably the most crucial demand right now, which is to end the genocide, was also on the forefront. And it was clear to us that in order to provide a vehicle for the demand for ending the genocide and ending US military funding for Israel and for the free public healthcare, we need to also launch an election campaign. And obviously Adam Smith, I happen to live in his district also, but he's clearly one of the chief warmongers, and it is important for us to launch this campaign as well.
Well, it's just so fitting that a communist gets to run against Adam Smith. I mean, how perfect is that? It was meant to be. It's meant to be. It's cosmic, right? KshamaSawant.org is your campaign website. Please, everybody, go check it out and contribute if you can. Kshama, always great to see you. For your campaign event, I promise, there's a promise I will make publicly. I promise to fly out there and rally with you as the date approaches. That is
are you serious?
My word. Oh, 100%. No doubt about it.
Kshama, this guy won't even go to Connecticut. So
no, that's my
really,
word.
That's really something.
Actually, I can't promise I'll fly. I might take a train. I don't know. It depends on what these Boeing planes are looking like, but I will get there. I will get there to rally with you 100%. That's my word. I'll say that publicly. Yes.
You know the date. You guys know the date, right? September 13th is when we are having our Saturday, September 13th. So you both have to be there.
Oh, all right. Well, let's see. Now you haven't done the date. All right. Well, all right. I said I would rally with you as the date approached. We're going to be in St. Louis a couple weeks before that filming a documentary. So I don't know if I'll be able to fly out for 2 in a row that close, but I will get out there and rally with you as the campaign goes on.
We'll do a separate event for 100%. When you can fly out. That's fine.
All right. Beautiful. All right. Cool. All right. So far, promise intact. All right. Kshama, thank you. I know you have an event to get to. Thanks for making time for us. Everybody go to KshamaSawant.org. Great to see you. Appreciate you taking the time, and congratulations on a great launch, and best of luck.
Thank you so much. Great to see you both as well. Take care. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. Kshama Sawant, everybody. Thanks for joining. Sorry about those technical glitches. So how are you? That seemed to work okay, the exhibits.
I mean, I'm jury rigging it. I'm like watching in the studio with the lag, but I'm looking down here to see what exhibit is playing. It's like a whole thing.
Oh, interesting. Well, yeah, what a pain. What a
well, clearly something's happening with StreamYard today.
Because, there's clearly a StreamYard glitch where we're switching around and everything. Yeah. Hey, let's get a cowbell and a sound drop for Landrew, because it was
it did work before because I loaded in my exhibit.
Oh yeah, it was working fine. And it's not like you logged out or anything happened. It's just a weird thing. Thanks, Landrew, for that super chat. Love review.
Landrew. Landrew is dead.
Put $100 on that. The Yuppies, thanks for the $5. God bless Shaman. God bless Due Dissidents. Free Palestine, equality, and life for all. I love you. Thank you, the Yuppies. Appreciate that very much. It's very kind. Film Spectacle says, can you please ask Shama why rent control and not public housing? How will people pay rent when their job is taken by AI? Well, that I can answer. Yeah. Yeah. The second part is a riddle. Obviously, the first part I know she advocated as a city council member for expansion of public housing to pretty radical extents. Didn't she say she wanted to make the brownstones public or something like that? That was something we asked her original.
She was, yeah,
manager.
way. Well, that was her campaign
Yeah.
manager. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she wanted to seize the mansions.
Yeah.
Like,
So
old Bolshevik.
that pass. I'm sure that passes your test there. Thank you for that. All right, Hillary Hinton. Hey, dirtbags. I had to take a mental health day on Sunday, but I'm back and ready for more soul-crushing, emotionally scarring. Bring on the dancing horses, especially the pale fucker. Thank you for that. Hillary Hinton says, also great interview with Gabor Mate, but I really wanted to know where he comes down on Biggie versus Tupac. So that's a resounding fail. Haha. Thank you. Yeah, it was a great show yesterday. We had a double feature, Gabor Mate and Max Blumenthal. That was quite something. It
was a little Jewish.
It was a little
the
Jewish.
The show was a little too Jewish.
It was a little Jewish. It was very Jewish. We could say that was very Jewish. Yeah. Somebody gave us a super chat about that. Someone gave us either a super chat or a Rumble rant. We'll get to it. Oh yeah. Eric Rousseau says, "Damn, there are a lot of actual anti-Semites in the JD chat yesterday. Hate the state of Israel, not the religion or ethnic group. We are about class solidarity." Well, it was a real spread. I mean, that was quite the Jew buffet yesterday. You had Russell, Keaton, Gabor Mate, and Max Blumenthal. If that don't bring him out, nothing will. I mean, it
was basically a Seder. We basically did a Seder.
Yeah, exactly. So we baited them. We got to say that. We baited them with that
Look,
lineup.
man,
yeah.
I touched on that a little bit with Gabor Mate. I think being a healthy, self-actualized person, he probably does not tune into what people are saying online as much as we do. Because I did bring up how what's going on with Israel is increasing anti-Semitism. He didn't seem to agree. But really, I mean, my point is exactly what you're talking about. Like, there's a large faction of people who were anti-Semitic long before October 7th, who have glommed onto this cause in order to legitimize their anti-Semitism.
Yes, and
that's, I'm sure, what you saw in the chat.
Yeah, and I want to be very, very clear about that. The people who use the pro-Palestine movement in that way are, I would say, in my experience, literally never the ones actually out on the street organizing and protesting.
Oh no,
they are the basement-dwelling keyboard warrior types. So they're not really part of the. They're not really part of the movement. They're just trolls who now see an opportunity to troll because there's anti-Israel sentiment out there.
Right, they're keyboard warriors,
right.
And I'll say when I've seen, and I mean this is the funny thing because I'll see even people who are, nominally pro-Palestine sometimes try to make the point, but we have to admit there is anti-Semitism within the movement. Yeah, but you know what? When I see people say anti-Semitic shit, it's not the brown Arabs, it's not the Palestinians, it's not the Muslims, it's pasty white people sitting there at a keyboard talking about how, the funny mustache man may have been right.
Exactly right. And I would not concede that they are in the movement. They show up to troll because they know they have an audience, right? There's a difference between that and being in the movement. I would not concede there is a significant or even measurable anti-Semitic faction within the pro-Palestine movement. I would not concede that at all. All right, let's move on here. We got plenty of show left, folks. Thanks for being here. 1,100 strong in the YouTube chat, 563 strong on Rumble. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button. Getting awful close to 100,000 subs, folks. We're at 99.5, 99.510. Yes, so we are getting close. Thank you all very much for your support. All right, folks. Well, we haven't heard from this guy in a while. We thought we'd never hear from him again. But alas, Matthew Miller has resurfaced. Yes. And we found, 4 months too late, Russell thought of a great sound drop for our friend Matthew Miller. Do we have that?
I never drink. Why?
If we thought of that,
I can't believe that did not occur to me back then.
It's a good thing we didn't think of that before November because we would have had to endorse Kamala just to keep him around so we could
keep
use
him around for that sound drop.
It's too perfect not to, right? Matthew Miller, the former U.S. State Department spokesperson, has publicly declared that Israel is without a doubt committing war crimes in Gaza. Instead of resigning, yes, he lied for well over a year and provided political cover for genocidal child killers. Yes, well said. So here he is on a podcast. This is from Sky News, has the video. This is him admitting that, yes, Israel certainly committed war crimes.
Gaza now is a genocide?
I don't think it's a genocide, but I think
I wouldn't go as far as to say genocide, because that makes me feel a little too guilty for having promoted it for a year and change. But war crimes,
Do you think
yeah.
what's going on in Gaza now is a genocide?
I don't think it's a genocide, but I think I think it is without a doubt true that Israel has committed war crimes.
You wouldn't have said that at the podium.
Yeah, look, because when you're at the podium, you're not expressing your personal opinion. You're expressing the conclusions of the United States government. The United States government has.
So I was just lying. So I was lying because that's my job.
You're a mouthpiece.
Right. My job was to lie, and so I decided to do my job, which was to lie and provide cover for, as that tweeter said, genocidal child killers. 3 State Department officials resigned, which we'll get to in a few minutes.
It was that or a gig with Big Tobacco.
Right, exactly, yes.
Had not concluded they've committed war crimes, still have not concluded that.
But your personal view is they have.
And
they were while you were there.
But let me qualify that. There are 2 ways to think about the commission of war crimes. One is if the state has pursued a policy to deliberately committing war crimes or is acting reckless in a way that aids and abets war crimes. And that, I think, is an open question. I think what is almost certainly not an open question is that there have been individual incidents that have been war crimes where members of the Israeli military have committed war crimes. So ultimately, in almost every major conflict, conflicts prosecuted by democracies, you will see individual members of the militaries commit war crimes, and the way you judge a democracy is whether they hold those people accountable.
But Israel hasn't.
That's my point.
Right.
Is we have not yet seen them hold sufficient numbers of the military accountable, and I think
I thought they were investigating.
Yeah, exactly, because they were investigating. That's right.
Yeah.
So we've watched countless videos of this guy saying, yeah, that looks a little troubling. Our Israeli partners are investigating, and they'll get back to us. That's why he's hedging. Because he realized he said they're committing war crimes, and now he has to say, well, they're not necessarily coming from the top down, those orders. These are bad apples who are not being properly investigated, right? So now he has to kind of frame this as a failure of bureaucracy, right? And that's where these war crimes come from.
It's an open question whether they're going to.
I'm really struck that you think now that Israel did commit war crimes, and yet at the time, and I get why, but at the time you were at the podium and you couldn't say that. I mean, personally, that must be very difficult for you.
So the State Department itself
look
had
like
concluded, it was? Not in these, they didn't phrase it in these terms, but I think I did at the podium a few times, had concluded that it was likely that Israel had committed war crimes.
No. That is such a load of bullshit. The State Department never said it was likely, and certainly those words never came out of your mouth. They never came out of you never once said this was likely a war crime. That is just absolute nonsense.
Well, I didn't say that, but my associate, I think you all call him Fat Sauger in the media. I think he said something like that.
Something
or he was
like
thinking
that,
about
maybe. He was thinking about it. Yeah, he wanted to say
it. I might be thinking of something he said at lunch, just between the 2 of us.
Yeah.
But I think I did at the podium a few times, had concluded that it was likely.
Oh, you know what? It's mustard on a hot dog. That's a war crime. That's what we were saying was a war crime. Not the Israeli genocide.
That Israel had committed war crimes. But I do think it's almost certain that they have.
Wow. Hey, how many different organizations can watermark the same video? You had Sky News, Trump 100. I think it is Trump 100 because that's in the set. But then you had Drop Site with the logo there. So let's just say we're not going to litigate this all day, folks. But Theo says this sick fuck spent over a year smirking at the suggestion that Israel was committing war crimes in Gaza. He's just trying to cover his own ass now that liberals are starting to admit it too. So here he is doing just that.
The Lancet group report, it's a medical magazine, British medical magazine, that estimated the deaths as a result of the war in Gaza to be 186,000.
I've seen the report, and I will just say whatever the number of civilians that have actually died as a result of this conflict, we know that it's far too many.
Are you concerned that the figures could be far more staggering than what we've seen published by, let's say, the Ministry of Health in Gaza?
The death toll could very well be more. We know there are potentially people who are under rubble who have not been counted. But it goes to the point I was making. Whatever the number is, the reported number already is far too high. Reported number already is unacceptable. The number of civilian deaths. So of course something higher than that would just be further tragedy. But we long ago passed the stage where this has been a horrific human tragedy for some time.
Smirking. You're smirking as you say that.
Go ahead with it.
You are smirking as you say that. Are you aware?
It's because I know I'm lying.
It's because I know I'm lying. Exactly. That's why he's smirking.
I never drink. Why?
That's why he's smirking. He's smirking because he
Wearing
knows
his
he's
hair
lying.
like that.
Yeah.
Like was that his little in joke? I'm going to go up here looking like a vampire and defending genocide. Wah, ah, ah.
He's smirking because he knows he wants to say they're committing war crimes. Yeah, but he can't. That's why he's smirking. That's his tell. The smirk was his tell. Hey, what about this? Since aid is in the news now, U.S. gives Israel, hey, remember in mid-October when Joe Biden gave Israel a 30-day ultimatum to boost Gaza aid or else they would suspend military support? Remember how they very randomly and not at all cynically gave them a 30-day deadline in mid-October to try and trick progressives into thinking they were going to hold Israel accountable a week after Election Day? Funny how they would give them a 30-day deadline from mid-October to mid-November with Election Day in the middle. That wasn't cynical at all. Of course not. And if you don't believe me, let's watch Matthew Miller.
Look, you've got 30 more days to starve people to death. That's not unreasonable.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's hear Matthew Miller's very sincere take on that ultimatum.
All of the things that we recommend in that letter. Now, that said, we are not at the end of the 30-day period, and we are in conversation.
Not ready to give them
it's not the end. It's not the end of the semester. You don't hand out grades.
Wow, that's an actual laugh. That's not even a smirk. That's actually a laugh. It's not the end of the semester, meaning, okay, so this was mid-October. This was the end of October, halfway through that 30-day ultimatum period. And he's saying, hey, well, they still have time. They still have time to get their shit together.
You don't hand out grades in the middle.
I suspect that the levity is a little bit inappropriate.
No,
but look, you guys say
Lee.
they haven't done enough, so it's a fail.
We are not at the end of where we are able to make an assessment. But I can tell you, the situation has not been good enough for some time, and the situation has not improved sufficiently in the 21, 22 days, whatever it is, since we sent that letter.
But they had until 30, and then they were going to be held accountable, right? That was checks notes November of last year. And, of course, one of the last things we heard from Matthew Miller before his exit was from our friend Max Blumenthal, who on January 16th posted this to Twitter. My final words for Tony Blinken, Secretary of Genocide, and his smirking press secretary, Matt Miller.
100 reporters in Gaza were on the receiving end of your bombs. Why did you keep the bombs flowing when we had a deal in May? We all knew we had a deal. Everyone in this room knows we had a deal, Tony, and you kept the bombs flowing. Why did you sacrifice the rules-based order on the mantle of your commitment to Zionism? Why did you allow my friends to be massacred? Why did you allow my friends' homes in Gaza to be destroyed when we had a deal in May? You helped destroy our religion, Judaism, by associating it with fascism. You waved the white flag before Netanyahu.
We'll have the time to take questions at the end.
You waved the white flag before Israeli fascism.
We'll have the time to take questions
Your
at the end.
Your father-in-law was an Israel lobbyist. Your grandfather was an Israel lobbyist. Are you compromised by Israel? Why did you allow the Holocaust of our time to happen? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? How does it feel to have your legacy be genocide? You too, Matt. You smirk through the whole thing every day. You smirk through a genocide.
You too, Matt. That's the last we heard from Matt Miller.
Genocide. You too, Matt. You smirk through the whole thing every day. You smirk through a genocide.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I have to get to a lunch with the Wolfman and the Mummy.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yes. So good for Max there. And it's true. He smirked through the whole thing. And now 4 months later, he's coming out and saying, well, you know, I was only representing the administration. I mean, yeah, I was saying things that ran counter to my personal opinions and my personal beliefs, but it wasn't my job to express my personal opinions. It was my job to lie for Antony Blinken, which is fair enough. Except you did have another option, which was exercised by several of your colleagues at the State Department, like Josh Paul, who resigned. First high-profile resignation. What about Stacey Gilbert, who resigned after the State Department falsified a report absolving Israel on Gaza aid? They whitewashed the findings that Israel was preventing aid in, and she resigned. Tired of writing about dead kids, why a U.S. State Department worker resigned over Israel-Gaza policy, Mike Casey, one of only 2 people explicitly focused on Gaza, left over inaction and doing, quote, what the Israelis want. So those are 3 State Department colleagues. Overall, 12 Biden administration officials resigned over his policy towards the Israel-Gaza war. So the idea that Matthew Miller's just simply had to keep that gig. Oh, yeah, this wasn't my opinion, but it was my job to lie for genociders. Well, you know what I would do if it were my job to lie for genociders? I would quit. Like if I signed up to be a spokesperson for the State Department, thinking, okay, this is going to be fairly run-of-the-mill stuff, and then they say, okay, now you have to go out, and when the reporters ask you about massacre 99, 100, and 101 of the last few weeks, you have to tell lie 99, 100, and 101 about how we don't know exactly what happened here and we're going to trust our Israeli partners to investigate. If your job was to go out there and do that every single day, if I found out that was the job, I would quit the job. I would quit the job. Matthew Miller, no doubt, he's got a resume that got him to that place, which means he's got a resume that'll take him somewhere else. You don't have to do that gig. You do not have to do that gig. He chose to do that gig every day, so there's no redemption for him, so he can fuck off with all of that.
My light fell.
I thought it was your effect. I thought you were going to do Matthew Miller. I thought it was a vampire. Yes. Yeah, I thought you did that on purpose.
Yeah, no, these people are scum of the earth. And you know, if you look at Matthew Miller's smirk and then you look at what he said in that interview, which I think most people in his position would not even say that even after, like, oh, mask off. Yes, of course I was lying on behalf of the administration. Most of them won't admit that. You know, Capitalist Realism, the book, it talks a lot about this. The idea of people processing the immorality of the capitalist system by conveying an ironical relationship to it, as if in some way that makes you not of it or above it, right? Yeah, well, you know, that's what we do in this society. I gotta go make my money, right? And now you're not really a capitalist,
right?
Because you're in on the joke, right? It seems like that's the way that he dealt with having a job like that. That's why he's smirking. He knows it's a joke. It's all a joke. That's his posture, right? Yeah, of course it's a lie, but I'm not really a liar because I have an ironical relationship to my own deception.
Exactly. All right. Do you want to get your light? I'll
I'll go fix that.
Right. Great tech day here at the show.
You know, we're batting 1,000 today.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Stanislav M says, could Kshama explain what she means by inter-imperialist war and what she proposes Russia should have done after 8 years of NATO-led bombing of civilians in the Donbass, another peace agreement? Yeah, I noticed she mentioned that in her speech as well. And yeah, that is something, I mean, I think she knows this about us. That is something I don't see quite eye to eye with her on in terms of like the underlying dynamics, but she is ultimately, of course, for an end to aid to Ukraine and an end to that war. Mark Pugliese, thanks for the $2. Go Kshama, thank you for that. David Cody Peppers, thanks for the $2. AIPAC has never supported a minimum wage hike in the U.S. But that is true. Sorry, we got Eric Rousseau over here. J.D. Vance is existential threat to democracy. We much rally behind Buttigieg Cortez 28 to save our country. Thank you. abiding. Appreciate that. Because 67, there's a Black Mirror episode, Be Right Back, all about using AI, tech, and robotics to resurrect a lost loved one. Creepy and sad.
Did I? Which episode? I must have seen it.
You
I've
must
seen all
have
the
seen it.
episodes. I don't remember.
Eric Cuso. So when is Israel dropping the Do Dissident sex tape? Yeah, your guess is as good as ours, my friend. They will rig the election against Sawant, says Eric Cuso. All right. Why don't we move right on? All right. We got a report from East Palestine, right? I have the right outline in front of me. That's next.
Yes, we do. Okay, so this is where this is going to get tricky because I didn't really have to read for the other ones. You might have to operate it.
All right.
Hang
That's
on,
not.
Because, yeah, let me see. Let me see how this would work. All right, because, yeah, man, that's going to be a pain. All right, so I think what I'm going to do is read it off in slideshow.
All right. Whatever you want.
You know what
Whatever
I'm
you
saying?
want. Well, if
You
I
know what
put
I'm
it up
saying?
here, can't you just read it here off your iPad?
Well, I don't have my iPad in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would have to go get the iPad, and it's going to be a whole thing. All right, hang on. Is it up?
Yeah.
All right. So as I read, I guess go forward in the exhibits.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. All right. Cool.
All right. So set it up and I'll put it up.
Okay. News Nation, through Freedom of Information Act requests, has exposed the reality that Jordan Sheridan, in particular, with 8 trips to East Palestine, has been very much on top of. The fact that the White House knew exactly what was going on in East Palestine, the fact that this supposedly controlled demolition of toxic chemicals was perfectly safe. They knew that wasn't true. They knew it was carcinogenic. And amongst themselves, they discussed it very openly while telling the public they had no idea what was going on. So this is News Nation here. FEMA, White House covered up East Palestine devastation. After officials burned 5 tankers containing 115,000 gallons of toxic vinyl chloride over East Palestine, residents were sick and crying out for help. In September 2023, 7 months later, President Biden issued an executive order sending FEMA executive Jim McPherson to East Palestine to assess the community's unmet needs. But new documents from FEMA obtained through the Freedom of Information Act show extensive coordination between FEMA, the White House, the National Security Council, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Justice, voicing serious concerns about health, toxins, and unmet needs of East Palestine following the train derailment. But publicly, their message was that there was nothing to those concerns. Quote, "It showed that FEMA knew healthcare was the #1 issue," Leslie Pacey told News Nation. Pacey is an investigator with the Government Accountability Project who sued to get these documents when FEMA refused to turn them over. Quote, "They also knew that they called this plume a really toxic plume. They knew that there would be the potential for cancer clusters," Pacey said. The agency noted, quote, "The occurrence of a cancer cluster in East Palestine is not zero," and expressed the need for a tripwire to identify cancer clusters. Pacey added, "It was only discussed internally, and it actually was discussed all the way up to the White House. There's White House officials and National Security Council officials discussing the dangers of the cancer cluster potential and the health issues, and discussing whether or not to release the unmet needs report to the public and to the media." So this is one of the emails from the White House point man. "Good morning. Attached is the weekly report to F1. More to follow, and I look forward to meeting with you back in East Palestine soon. The state does not want me to participate in the 3 November community meeting at this time. The state would rather that the state, feds, local EP community, RP, work on a plan to announce the transition from incident recovery to long-term recovery. Glad to discuss. I am getting calls from the vocal local community, but I have been advised best not to engage with the public until we finalize the long-term recovery plan and socialize the roles of stakeholders. So this was one of the big complaints of the residents of East Palestine, that they were getting the runaround, that the person who was supposed to be representing the White House was ignoring them, not returning their calls. And now you know why. Internally, he was being told not to, which is pretty obvious. They never released the unmet needs report to the public or the media, and the FEMA coordinator sent here by Biden wouldn't meet with residents. A DHS spokesperson told News Nation, quote, emails of FEMA ignoring a potential cancer cluster breakout in East Palestine, Ohio, under the Biden administration is yet another outrageous example of the gross mismanagement and poor treatment of Americans under the prior administration. Now, the statement goes on to talk about Hurricane Helene and Lake and Riley and to take shots at the Biden administration. I will believe that this administration is going to do more for these people than the previous one did when I see it, but we'll get into that. All right, so this was Jordan's article about this, about the cover-up. And this is just one of the many videos that Jordan has done with the residents of East Palestine over the years that he's been on top of this story. You have that, Keaton?
I have to hit the videos too, right? Not just the
I mean, I could do it.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know I was on video duty too.
No, it's all right. Well, all right.
Here it is.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. You got it, or should I?
Go ahead, hit it.
Tell folks what's been going on.
Well,
and you're 18.
Yeah, I'm 18. I've never had health issues, anything like this before in my life. I'm an active person. I go to the gym, and since this derailment happened, I've been having health issues with my blood pressure going low and high. And then one day I was at work, and I just started having seizures. And I've been in the hospital. First, I was at the Women Hospital. They said they couldn't find anything, so then I got transported to another hospital in Youngstown. They can't find anything. I was in a hospital for a week, and then they sent me home with seizure medicine. That's all they could do. No answers. Like I said, they don't test you for chemicals or anything like that. I mean, I had everything done possible at the hospital, and they still can't find nothing, but I'm still having seizures. Right now, the people just came, and I had to have this wrapped around my head. It's what is it? EEG. A 3-day EEG, which I already did it at the hospital. I have to do it again to make sure everything's okay, to see, if there's something else.
So, 18-year-old girl, whole life thrown into disarray. This is back to Status Quo's article. As the partisan news coverage and non-coverage comes and eventually fades, hundreds, perhaps thousands of innocent Americans in Ohio and Pennsylvania will continue to suffer with a staggering list of health issues, including cancer, seizures, strokes, kidney issues, nosebleeds, blood and urine, bloody stool, body tingling, tingling lips, numb lips, eye pain, burning eyes, red eyes, blurred vision, dementia, headaches, migraines, feeling delirious, feeling drunk, dizziness, fatigue, hair loss, burning scalp, early puberty in boys, premature menstrual cycles in young girls, memory loss, forgetfulness, confusion, decreased alertness, depression, anxiety, PTSD. This may be a Biden cover-up, and his administration officials should be held accountable, but Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are now president and vice president. Although I am highly suspect they will do any of the following, they have the power and responsibility to change the narrative to the truth. East Palestine and swaths of western Pennsylvania are severely chemically contaminated, and residents who want to be permanently relocated should be aided in doing so at the expense of the government and or Norfolk Southern, as well as affected local businesses to be taken care of financially. Trump and Congress should also provide lifetime free health care for these residents who sadly have an uncertain future ahead filled with health issues. They need free treatment and testing for the rest of their lives. And while they're at it, do the same for Flint, Michigan residents who are still receiving toxic water 11 years later. There should also be a criminal investigation and charges against Norfolk Southern officials, EPA officials, and any other government or corporate entities that recklessly allowed the unnecessary detonation of an unprecedented volume of toxic chemicals. If Trump wants to, quote, make America great again, he can start by making East Palestine and Western Pennsylvania as close to whole as possible. Here, but I will remind you all, Trump just denied North Carolina's request for FEMA relief from Hurricane Helene, calling it unwarranted, and this administration has such a pair of balls on it that they would make a statement about how the Biden administration did not take care of the people who were victims of Hurricane Helene after they made that decision. They just made this statement about this, slamming the Biden administration for Hurricane Helene. Absolutely shameless administration. Jordan, I'm sure, is aware of this, and he says as much. There's no way this White House is going to give the slightest bit of a shit about these people. I would love to be proven wrong. North Carolina voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump in the counties affected by Hurricane Helene. He didn't care. It doesn't matter that this is basically a red county of Trump voters. They don't care about that. These poor people, man, these poor people, like they can't even get what in another country you would have, even if you weren't poisoned. Free healthcare.
Right.
Add insult to injury. Like, what? They're going to have to pay for their own healthcare being poisoned? All these people at Norfolk Southern should be in jail. And this is not a Democrat, Republican thing. Look at Flint. You know, Flint was poisoned by Republicans. Those Republicans were let off the hook by Democrats, by the subsequent Democratic administration. You know, when it comes to money, when it comes to power in this country, you can get away with anything. You can murder an entire town of people. They did it in Flint. Now they did it in East Palestine. It's not even a black-white thing. Flint was a black town. East Palestine's primarily white. It's a poor, rich thing. If you don't have money to take care of you and yours, they can always run over you and no one's going to hold them accountable.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, when we've talked about in the past how, you know, if the Trump administration were competent fascists, they would swoop in and help these people, and that would solidify their grip on power because, you know, they would provide for people in ways that the party of democracy failed to. And this is why, and we've been saying this for over and over and over again, this goes back to the FDR fireside chat piece that we played, I think shortly after Trump won or shortly after he took office, one of those two, how you have to prove democracy can work for people or else people will give up on it. And this is a perfect example of that. You read that list of symptoms that these people are suffering with, and now it comes out that all of this was known and covered up in real time by the party of democracy. And then they want to come and lecture you about how you have to preserve this system because it's so much better than what Donald Trump is going to usher in. That rings completely hollow for plainly obvious reasons. It is such a despicable story. It's such a horrible story. Horrible in the sense that what they're doing to these people is horrible, and the political implications of it are even worse when you consider that this is the party that insisted that they were the last line of defense against fascism. If you wanted to stave off fascism, you would prove democracy and the kind of bureaucracy and the kind of accountability measures that are supposed to be in place in a democratic society would step in and stop a thing like this from getting to the point where you have an entire town poisoned by a corporation that is pretty much going to walk away from this with a slap on the wrist, if anything.
If that.
if anything, right? You can't make the case for democracy when that is what you're showing people democracy is. If that's democracy, people are not going to go to bat for it. On the other hand, like I just said, if the Trump administration were competent, they would come in and they would treat these people like kings and queens, and then their grip on power would be solidified because, hey, they're providing in ways that the haranguing liberals didn't. But when you show equal contempt and equal disregard for these people, what does that leave people with? And this is what we've been talking about too, is, okay, what happens when MAGA disappoints? Do people run back to the Democrats? I mean, the Democrats have a very slight edge in congressional polling because of the nature of a midterm voter base. But broadly speaking, the Democrats' brand is in the toilet. It's tanked. And so what happens when these people get fucked over by Trump? That creates a complete crisis of confidence in the system wholesale, which both of these parties have worked hand in hand to usher in. The Flint is a perfect example. The Republicans did the crime. The Democrats came in and did the cover-up.
Yep. So basically the message of the show today, if there's anyone from the Trump administration watching, we want you guys to model successful fascism, okay? Because the way you're doing this, it's all wrong.
It's all wrong.
You're getting this all wrong. You're supposed to grab these fat cats from Norfolk Southern, and you're supposed to frog march them and do a kind of show trial. People would love it. People would love it. They're not, to Keaton's point, they're not all that attached to democracy at this point. Right? It's been decades of economic dislocation. If you would go in there, look at when we covered the North Carolina story about how they weren't going to give them the funding. Before that, you have all these people online. Thank God for Donald Trump coming in, because he did a whole, after he got elected, he did a whole presser letting people who had been victims of the hurricane, who had been mistreated by FEMA, go to microphones and tell their stories, and then you don't do anything for them. It's just the show of it. It's just the show of it, because in the end, they have nothing but contempt for their own voters. They are only interested in you insofar as they need something from you, which up to this point has been your vote. So they have to just tell you some shit, but hey, how do you know a thing? By what it does. What have they done since they've been in office? Run a crypto scam? Denied help to their own voters in that same hurricane that they're still slamming the previous administration for, even after they denied their request for increased aid. Just amazing, man. So yeah. What do people do? They really have nowhere to go. You know, that's the kind of thing that leads to de facto civil war, man, where you've just got a collapse of the system and different factions fighting over what the future is going to look like, which is pretty much where we are. But that's going to get heightened, and it's going to accelerate.
Absolutely. 100%. All right. Mr. Fancy Pants, thanks for the $9.99. Regardless if she wins or not, we know for sure Kshama won't sell us out. Plus, she attracts the weirdest trolls who make for great entertainment. There you go. Todd S., thanks for the $10. So glad to see Kshama running. It's been 3 decades since an independent got elected into the House. Bernie Sanders, I think now will wake up a lot of people in the country. We need to wake up. Well, yeah, you know, she got an interesting question at her press conference. If you win, do you intend to caucus as a Democrat? And she said no. And that's what she referenced that in this interview here, where, you know, a lot of, you know, there are certain people, it's rare, but there are certain people who run as independents and they win. But then, like Bernie, he caucuses as a Democrat.
They're basically Democrats.
Angus King from Maine, he caucuses with the Democrats, which means you are independent in name only. It doesn't mean anything unless you bring that outside energy to work every day with you. So I think that's a good point. Thank you, Todd S. Brent Yoendo, thanks for the $10. Washingtonian here. I'll never vote for either major party. Can't unsee the unwavering support for genocide. I trust in Kshama's humanity and back her, though. I trust in Hedges, U2, Webb, and Sachs. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Brent Yoendo for the Keaton Travel Fund. Thank you for the $20. Also, I've recently found therapists with anti-colonial backgrounds through inclusive therapy site. Luckily, have union benefits and are giving it a go. Oh, that is really cool to hear.
That's interesting.
Yes, because the last thing you want is a therapist where you talk about this to, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean? Israel has the right to defend itself." You're like, "Oh shit,
I
money
had
down
that.
the drain."
I had that. That was my last therapist. That's
Yeah,
part of why I didn't like her. She was a total Zionist.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you mean genocide? Right? Thanks for helping me keep my humanity intact. Thank you, Brent Uendo. Appreciate that. Shouldn't have to feel nervous about being anti-genocide with a therapist. No, you should not, Brent Uendo. Absolutely not. Thank you and good luck. Miriam Cotton, thanks for the €20. Appreciate that. A lot of 20s flying around on YouTube today. A lot of 20s flying around. Thanks, everybody. Hey, guys, found the channel called Generational Change. It's like methadone to help get through a due dissidence withdrawal on the days off. One of the hosts is like Russell, but with Irish blood. We know those guys, Jen and
we know
Peter.
them.
Jen and Peter. Peter invited me to co-host with him. I had to turn him down for the same reason that I had to back out of the Post-duopoly show tonight. There is Post-duopoly at 7 o'clock. Russ will be there representing due dissidents. As you can see, I look a bit wreckish. My wife told me that right before I went on the air. She said, you look kind of like a wreck. I said, well, I am kind of like a wreck. I am quite burnt out, and I still have a lot of work to do for the show, editing and things like that. And I also have some family obligations that I have to fulfill, given the fact that I've been burning the candle at both ends recently. But so Russ will be representing due dissidents on Post-duopoly show on RBN tonight. And Peter was kind to invite me on Monday, but I had to pass this time because I hate to sound like Liz Warren and talk about self-care, but I am quite tired. I'm quite tired from these last couple of weeks.
Well,
So
we're doing the Jimmy Show, right?
Oh yeah, and we're back on the Jimmy Show Monday of next week, and then we got a couple days the following week. So we will be back. So I needed, especially since I'm going back to the Jimmy Show, I needed a little bit of a breather from the extracurricular stuff. So, but yeah, no, those guys are friends of the show, of course. Thank you for that race car. S. Jarrah, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that. Letta Gray says, how is it that people like Landrew and others can afford to be so generous to not only you, but other podcasts? Rich people I know would not be fans of yours. Hey, man.
It's Elon's burner.
It's Elon's burner. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some people, surprise you. Landrew is a real one. So thanks to Landrew, of course.
I think he's a gangster.
Yeah. Victor Shakapa, I don't know. Gangsters, he would throw cash. He would mail us cash to our P.O. box if that were true. Just finished your last live stream. Russ promised me that when we reach the stage when all cinema is done by AI, in search of some authenticity, we'll attend one of those Polish live film festivals. Thank you, Victor. Appreciate that. Thank you. E.O. Shush says, great segment with Gabor Mate. At one point, I thought it would turn into a scene from Good Will Hunting. Keaton, it's not your fault. Not your Gabor. Don't mess with me. Keaton, it's not your fault. Good reference. No, it was a great. I mean,
that
would have
been legendary.
That's why I wanted to have him on. I really wanted to, talk about that stuff since he's one of the best there is. He's one of the best there is.
Keaton's health insurance doesn't cover therapy. That's how he pitched it to me. He was like, let's have Gabor Mate on. We could kill two birds with one stone. Great guest, free therapy.
My wife was kind of starstruck when she saw that we were interviewing him because she follows him on Instagram. My wife is kind of a normal person, so she doesn't follow this podcast scene very closely, but she knew who he was because he has a huge Instagram following. So, yeah, it was a great, great talk. And it was really, really.
She doesn't watch our show.
She doesn't watch our show. Doesn't watch our show. You know who watches my show? My oldest sometimes will watch our show at night. Because he likes for me to tuck him in, when he goes to bed, and so on the Sunday night shows I can't, so he watches the show in bed. That's
a lot of F-bombs for him.
He gets a virtual tuck in.
A lot of adult humor for that kid.
He has very active thumbs, and he watches on YouTube. I just hope he doesn't accidentally report us for anti-Semitic hate speech one time. That would be
might.
Ironic. Yeah. Yeah.
Got a couple of narcs in that house.
Exactly. I feel we need to rebuild the hospitals in Gaza so we can bomb them again. Anonymous Israeli Zionist. That should get Hamas to surrender. Oh, dang, says Keaton. That's Rosh Hashanah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's mid-September. That's right. Yeah, see, Kshama doesn't miss a beat. I offer to fly out there. 3 seconds later, she has a date. Okay, all right. September 13th. I'll see you then. Like, that's why she's a winner.
As soon as you said it, I was like, that's not going to happen. I've heard this before.
I don't think I can make September 13th because
Yeah,
we have the Uhuru film.
Your mouth always gets out ahead of your.
No, I have to go out there for a
willingness to
campaign.
travel.
I can't miss a campaign. I have to go out there for a campaign rally. I have to.
You're really going to go to Seattle.
I said I promise
You're
I will
gonna
do it.
go to Seattle.
I said I promise I will do it. I do not break promises. I never promised
All
Workers
right.
Strike Back because I knew that was going to be kind of tough. But I promised this one. Now I didn't promise a date. We're going to be in St. Louis at the end of August, so September, that's a tough turnaround for a family man like myself. But I will get out there for a rally. That's no doubt about that. 100%. 100%.
Okay.
All right. What do we got now? All right. We got some more stuff to do. All right, folks. We will be switching to Rumble for the final 2 segments of the show, but we got 2 more before then. Okay. So, obviously, this is just the latest in the horror show that is Gaza. Dozens of Palestinians killed near Gaza aid distribution point, health officials say. In third consecutive day of shooting near these aid distribution centers. Just think of how Orwellian that is. Palestinians on their way to receive aid from a distribution site in southern Gaza have come under fire for a third consecutive day, with nearly 30 people killed and dozens wounded, according to the Palestinian Ministry of Health and Nasser Hospital. The ministry said Israeli forces opened fire on Palestinians as they made their way to the distribution site in Tel Al Sultan in Rafah early Tuesday. At least 27 people were killed and dozens injured, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry and the director of Nasser in Gaza. Footage obtained by CNN showed people arriving at Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, many on stretchers. Dr. Marwan Al-Hams, the head of field hospitals in Gaza, said Nasser has been overwhelmed by the number of casualties coming in. So Ron Yakalik from Breakthrough News, great channel, great account on X. The Israelis have starved Palestinians for 3 months. Now they are luring Palestinians to distribution points with desperately needed aid and shooting them. It's a sick death trap. This is vicious genocidal behavior supported by the most powerful countries in the world, whose leaders call us uncivilized and violent, meaning the pro-Palestine protesters. So Suppressed News posts this video from Channel 4. Channel 4 released a detailed timeline of the Rafah massacre, where Israeli forces killed over 31 Palestinians and wounded more than 200 near a death trap aid distribution point. So we'll play the first couple minutes of this report, which is all we can show you on YouTube, because there is some violent content in the full thing. But this one will give you an idea of the site and scene at these aid distribution sites.
Exactly what happened has been highly contested, the Israeli military saying it hadn't shot at Palestinians at or near the site. But multiple witnesses say they were shot at while trying to reach the site, belonging to the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation.
The US and Israel, what do they tell us? Go and get your food and water and aid. When it arrives, they hit us. Is this fair? Those who go to get food from there, they die.
GHF has so far established 4 what it calls safe distribution sites inside Gaza. On Sunday morning, only one site, SDS-1, was due to open at 6 a.m. But from midnight already, thousands of people had gathered at a junction just over a kilometre away. Many, we're told, had travelled from the far north of the Strip. As more locals arrived, pressure to get to the front intensified. Witnesses tell us the crowd moved slowly southwards.
Now, I'll just pause it for a second. We've said this in the past, but it's important. They're setting the aid up in the south because they want to clear out the north so they can settle the south for themselves.
Right.
So what they're doing is they're forcing everybody in the north, okay, if you want food, you have to walk south, and then we'll give you the food. Of course, when they get there, very few of them get the food, and dozens of people are shot at for now 3 days in a row. Think of that. For the 3rd day in a row, they fired on people at an aid distribution site. I mean, these are headlines that, like, if you were writing a movie, you would have to rewrite the scene because you think, well, no one would believe that. No, it was 3 days in a row. You open fire on people who you're supposed to be giving food to, and the international community does nothing about that. Like it's beyond imagination. I've been using that phrase a lot because it's true. It's beyond the imagination. You couldn't think this up if you tried.
Tank near the site fired warning shots, armed quadcopters first broadcasting verbal warnings, then shooting warning shots themselves. At around 3:30, we're told there was chaos, crowds running back and forth, soldiers, tanks and naval boats all firing. This is when the first gunshot injuries are reported. An hour later, the crowd, now the biggest since the start of the GHF operations, surged for the aid site, and this was when the majority of killings happened. Even then, many still tried to reach the site, hundreds doing so around 5 a.m., stripping it bare, witnesses say, within minutes.
Okay, and what Israel is saying, by the way, as if this couldn't get more demonically absurd, is that the aid sites are safe because we technically don't fire at the aid sites, but they fire online to the aid sites. That's what they're actually saying.
Wow.
It's an account that suggests the new aid mechanism is simply not up to dealing with such numbers, such need.
This is all we've walked away with. We were there, lying on the floor since 4 a.m., and the quadcopters were firing at us. The Israelis were firing at us. People were crouching on the floor, women and children, and in the end, all we left with is a can of fava beans.
That bag. There's a can of beans out of that bag that he has there. Play that one more time.
This is all we've walked away with. We were there, lying on the floor since 4 a.m., and the quadcopters were firing at us. The Israelis were firing at us. People were crouching on the floor, women and children, and in the end, all we left with is a can of fava beans.
Just unbelievable. So unbelievable that we're starting to even see some headlines like this. U.S. consulting firm quits Gaza humanitarian aid effort amid criticism. A U.S. and Israeli-backed initiative to feed starving Gazans has struggled during its first week of operations. Oh, it has struggled, really, with the resignation of 2 top executives, allegations that the Israeli military has shot into crowds of civilians rushing to pick up aid packages, and the ongoing refusal of the United Nations and humanitarian partners to join the effort. Well, the UN has been frozen out. This GHF was set up to usurp the UN.
Right.
That was the whole point of it. It's not the UN is not willing to go to Gaza, is that they cannot be there when these people are there for pretty obvious reasons.
Right. Yeah.
On Friday, a leading U.S. management consulting firm hired last fall to help design the program and run its business operations withdrew its team operating on the ground in Tel Aviv. A spokesperson for the firm, Boston Consulting Group, said the company had terminated its contract with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and placed one of the senior partners leading the project on leave pending an internal review. 3 people closely connected to both the GHF and BCG, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the matter, said that it would be difficult for the foundation to continue to function without the consultants who helped create it. In addition to helping develop the initiative in close coordination with Israel, BCG set the prices for paying and equipping the array of contractors who built 4 distribution hubs in southern Gaza to deliver the aid. They are actually making the wheels turn, said one of the people of BCG's involvement. A spokesperson for BCG stated that the firm had provided, quote, pro bono support to the humanitarian operation and will not get paid for any of the work it has done on behalf of the foundation. Another person familiar with its operations contradicted the firm's account, saying that BCG had presented monthly invoices of more than $1 million. The UN and other aid professionals, as well as some foreign aid donors, have long expressed concerns about the viability, morality, and safety of the GHF's model, which confines food distribution to limited sites in the south and leaves Israel in control of how much aid enters the enclave. Nearly all major humanitarian organizations have refused to participate on the grounds that it violates their rules of neutrality and appears designed to further Israel's war aims. Even some senior Israeli defense officials have questioned the GHF model, anticipating that long lines could lead to stampedes, according to internal documents obtained by the Washington Post. And of course, these long lines have led to stampedes. It's almost like people who have experience in these situations could see how doomed to fail this was at the outset. And of course, it was doomed to fail by design. Don't forget, Netanyahu, Bezalel Smotrich, they had to go on camera and essentially apologize to their own people for allowing any aid in at all. They're saying we're only doing this to essentially make a show of providing aid so that we'll continue to get weapons. This was never intended to actually provide anywhere near adequate aid
Of course not.
for the Palestinians. Calling the overall situation a tragedy, the World Food Programme's executive director, Cindy McCain, told ABC News on Sunday what we need right now is an immediate ceasefire, complete unfettered access, along with the safe roads, every gate open to feed people and stop this catastrophe from happening. So Michael Tracy observes, it's rather amazing that Cindy McCain now almost sounds radical in an American political context. Exactly. This is not Abby Martin.
I was
This
wondering, is
Cindy
it that,
McCain.
is it that Cindy McCain?
It's that Cindy McCain, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this ain't Abby Martin here. This is Cindy McCain by virtue of working directly on the situation in Gaza. So here she is on George Stephanopoulos.
I think you can add about this incident this morning, Hamas claiming 31 people killed. You just saw the GHF denying that anything happened. Do you have any independent information?
Well, our people are reporting the same thing on the ground. It's a tragedy, and what we need right now is an immediate ceasefire, complete unfettered access, along with the safe fence roads, every gate open to feed people and stop this catastrophe from happening. If we don't do that, it's going to be a humanitarian catastrophe, as I said, like none other.
So just to be clear, you're saying your people believe that the incident did in fact happen and that individuals were killed this morning?
Yes, we do.
You're calling for a ceasefire right now. Steve Witkoff said there's been a step back. How important is that right now? And what more can be done to implement that ceasefire?
Well, the previous ceasefire proved that we could do the job. We were getting in over 600 trucks a day during the ceasefire into Gaza. So people were not, they didn't have the feel of desperation. They knew food was coming. They knew they had access to food right now. And now we don't. I mean, they don't have nearly enough access points. They don't have nearly enough food going in. And so the feel of desperation, you can see it in the video, it's very disheartening. I mean, for all of us that do this, this is what we do. We understand what it takes and we understand the complexity of it, but we also understand the grave humanitarian need that is existing now.
So she makes an important point there. Once again, this is John McCain's wife. This is a neocon Republican. This is, I mean, what she's saying there is that during the ceasefire, when the UN was allowed in, we were able to get, I mean, nothing is adequate, but they were able to, maintain some level of aid distribution. And now what the United States and Israel have done is they have shut these organizations out so that they could handle the aid operation, which of course is just another vehicle for occupation and ethnic cleansing. The very fact that they set these up in the South and force people to relocate, that tells you what the real motivation behind this was. And the fact that this is getting so bad and so transparently sadistic and evil that the American companies that joined are now having to withdraw support shows that really this chapter of it is the reason why there has been a noticeable I would shift in opinion, if you want to call it that, is because there is just no excusing this. And the fact that once they opened up Gaza to aid, it has gone arguably worse because of these massacres. I think the day 2 massacre, they actually called the Witkoff massacre because of this negotiated arrangement that has led to essentially a U.S. and Israeli mercenary group distributing aid while collecting biometric data on these people, tracking their movement, forcing them to relocate. It's completely dystopian and hellish. And the fact that it's getting so bad that the companies themselves are having to back out shows you that the withholding of aid and then the way in which the manipulative and cruel way that they have reintroduced quote unquote aid to Gaza has just escalated this to a point where, as you'll see in our next segment, the former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, is actually speaking out. And so they have just completely destroyed their image on the world stage. They are well on their way to being a pariah state. That is accelerating very, very quickly because of shit like this. When Cindy McCain is on ABC News talking about how, we need a ceasefire, that's how you know you're losing, and they are losing in that sense.
Yeah, there will never again be a day where Israel is able to kind of, as it has for 76 years, fly under the world's radar. That most people just didn't really understand what was really going on in Israel. I think most people had accepted at worst it's complicated formulation. It's complicated. These people fighting over this land. Why can't we all just get along? And they did not really understand the demonic nature of the Israeli state. And now it's just been exposed for all the world to see. The level of arrogance that has come from being able to essentially brutalize this population for 3/4 of a century while being perceived as the victim has made them arrogant to the point that they are committing genocide in broad daylight and thinking that they will be able to continue to function as a state. You can see the Israeli thinking is very the ends justify the means, and one day, as I saw in Australia, the Aborigines will come very often and do a little ceremony before a concert, that kind of thing. One day we'll have, Palestinian will come and dance before the opening of the symphony. And at that point, it'll be a fait accompli. People can wring their hands. They can make very guilty documentaries about how terrible it was. But at that point, greater Israel will have been accomplished. That's what they're thinking. They're thinking this too shall pass.
Right.
This is our opportunity. People have a short memory, and don't worry. Once it's done, maybe a few years, it won't be very popular. I don't think so. It's a very small country. The United States, its principal backer, has seen better days. It doesn't look like the future is very bright for this country.
What happened to Russell there? Something happened. Something happened there. Am I here? I'm still here.
Am I here?
Yeah, you just froze for a second.
Yeah, I saw that.
Country's seen better days. That's where you froze.
The country has seen better days, and the other Western powers are finding this so horrific that even Germany is starting to speak out against this. Thousands of Israeli businesses have gone under. Somebody just tagged us in a video of an Israeli cruise ship went to Crete, and the Greeks started screaming at them and protesting against the cruise ship. It's going to be like that for Israelis. I don't see that changing. I've been saying, some people say it's overly optimistic. I think Israel is going to collapse as a state, especially because it is not a state full of people who are going to be willing to live in a third world country. And I think those are going to be the conditions. And on the other side, in terms of what Israelis are going to face, this is already happening. The art world is very cowardly about speaking out about this. But I know from my contacts in the art world, Israelis can't get hired anymore. They can't get hired at museums. They can't get hired at theaters. So there is, we've said this from the beginning. How many of these people are not pro-Palestine? They won't say it because they're cowards, but they don't have to hire you. Right. Who's going to want to hire Israelis after this? Palantir? They're all going to have to go to Palantir, Facebook, Meta.
Right. And those jobs are being automated. So
those are being automated out of existence.
Not much of an employment scene there anyway. Exactly. And S. Gerald, thanks for the $1.99. Appreciate that super sticker. Lita Gray says, how is it that people like... Oh, got that one already. Sorry. LOL says, Javier, Landrew is funding you guys like the U.S. funds Israel. You guys wouldn't last 2 days without Landrew sending you weapons. I mean, super chats. Thank you, Javier. Appreciate that. Okay. Dedamod got that one. Okay. Oh, dang, says Keaton. That's Rosh Hashanah. Oh, got that one too. Okay, here we go. Vito P says, will help if I can. Go Kshama. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that donation. That's very kind of you. Thank you. Bonzo Bean says, you guys could start a DD breakup reality show with Gobber. Kaching. Yeah, what I always wanted to tell you, season 1. There you go. Thank you. Hamhawk 30. You know, there's solar storm going on. Good excuse for tech problems. Is there a solar storm going on? That could be.
Oh, is there?
Could be.
Is there? Has the apocalypse finally arrived?
Has it started? Yeah. Delighted. Gabor Mate recommended the film Israelism. Please watch for free on Al Jazeera at YouTube. Thank you for that, Agitas. Appreciate that. America is a scam Ponzi scheme, says Eric Cuso. Thank you, Eric Cuso. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, we got one more segment over here, and then we are switching over to Rumble. So dudissidents.com/Rumble. That takes you to this very live stream. So go over there, follow that link, and head over and watch us on Rumble for the remainder of the show after this one more segment. Okay, here we go. So Piers Morgan just hosted former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert from 2006 to 2009, who tells Piers Morgan now he thinks Netanyahu should face International Criminal Court charges for war crimes. Here is a piece of this interview, and then we have some more in a few minutes.
To a point where a leadership decision has to be made to stop it. And the majority of Israelis believe that Netanyahu carries on and wants to expand it, not because of any national interest that justifies it, but because of political considerations. What is it?
Now, the vast majority of Israelis also support the genocidal aims of the Netanyahu government. They just want their hostages back. So don't get it twisted. Right. This is not. I'm not putting this up here to show you what a great guy this guy is, Ehud Olmert. In fact, he spent a lot of time denying that Israel was committing war crimes. This is more, again, an indication of things that you would never imagine in a million years you would see the former prime minister come out and talk this way. Just like we never thought we'd hear Piers Morgan talk this way. We never thought American companies would start ditching this shell company, this aid scheme that they had going on, but they're having to.
The crime.
So do you think he should be at The Hague one day for this?
Look, there should be a voice. And if as a result of the fact that I was prime minister and I'm fairly well known in the international community, that people want to hear what I have to say, I have to say it, yes. I'm prepared. I'm ready to. I'm already in the middle of the heat, of those who oppose me. But I think I should do that.
All right. Now, the reason he was on Piers Morgan is because he published an op-ed in Haaretz last week, May 27th. Enough is enough. Israel is committing war crimes. So we're going to read some of this. The government of Israel is currently waging a war without purpose, without goals or clear planning, and with no chances of success.
I mean, that's not true, but he doesn't want to talk about greater Israel.
Well, this is what I mean. I'm not saying.
The goals are very, very clear, actually.
The goals are very, very clear if you're not in denial about the ethos of the project in general, which, of course, most Israelis are. Almost all of them. Almost all of them. Even a lot of the well-meaning ones are in denial about the potential for this state to turn things around and do good. We had those doctors, when the medic massacre happened, these doctors come out. What kind of a country are we if we allow this to happen? Well, you answered your own question, there, my friend. Right? Like, I appreciate that you're trying, but you answered your own question there, And so this is a case of that. At best, again, I'm not even giving this guy that much credit to go there. Never since its establishment has the state of Israel waged such a war. Well, I mean, it's come awful close, which is why we knew this was going to be a genocide. The second Netanyahu mentioned the unprecedented response. The criminal gang headed by Benjamin Netanyahu has set a precedent without equal in Israel's history in this area, too. Recent operations in Gaza have nothing to do with legitimate war goals. The government sends our soldiers and the military obeys to wander around Gaza City, Jabalia, and Khan Yunis neighborhoods in an illegitimate military operation. This is now a private political war. Its immediate result is the transformation of Gaza into a humanitarian disaster area. Over the past year, harsh accusations were voiced worldwide against the Israeli government and its military's conduct in Gaza, including accusations of genocide and war crimes. In public debates in Israel and on the international arena, I've rejected such accusations firmly, though I didn't shrink from criticizing the government. The international media listens to all voices in the public debate in Israel. It can discern between those who serve as mouthpieces for Netanyahu and his lackeys and his opponents who view him, as the media is currently fond of saying, as the head of a crime family. I didn't hesitate to give interviews in Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, the UK, and elsewhere in the international arena. Quite often, I disappointed interviewers when I vehemently asserted that Israel wasn't committing war crimes in Gaza. Excessive killing happened, but I claimed firmly and with conviction, in no case did a government official give orders to hit Gazan civilians indiscriminately. So, once again, the point of this is not to show what an exemplar of judgment and character this man is. The point of this is to show that a year ago we'd be screaming at the screen watching one of his interviews because he'd be one of these pieces of shit denying war crimes. And now he's publishing this in the Israeli paper of record. Genocide and war crimes are legal terms that very much refer to the intent and responsibility of the people authorized to formulate the war's objectives, its conduct, and its purpose, the boundaries of fighting, and the limitations on the use of force. I took every available opportunity to distinguish between the crimes we have been accused of, which I refuse to admit, and the carelessness and indifference regarding Gazan victims and the unbearable human cost we've been levying there. The first accusation I rejected, the second I admitted to. In recent weeks, I've been no longer able to do so. It's very awkward writing there, but we will let that go. What we are doing in Gaza now is a war of devastation. Indiscriminate, limitless, cruel, and criminal killing of civilians. We're not doing this due to loss of control in any specific sector, not due to some disproportionate outburst by some soldiers in some unit. Rather, it's the result of government policy, knowingly, evilly, maliciously, irresponsibly dictated. Yes, Israel is committing war crimes. Israeli media outlets, each for its own reasons, some understandable, are trying to present a moderate version of events in Gaza. But the picture displayed around the world is much broader, much more devastating. It's impossible to view it with equanimity and a nod, as if the world's reaction is merely a widespread outburst of anti-Semitism because everybody hates us and they're all anti-Semites. Okay, so this is where you talk about killing a sacred cow. This next paragraph, he says, well, no. French President Emmanuel Macron is no anti-Semite. I know him well. I've been talking to him over the last few months. When the hour was at hand, the French military stood on the front line to defend Israel and cooperated in intercepting Iran's missile attacks. Quote, we're fighting with you against your enemies under my direction, and you've been accusing me of supporting terrorism, Macron recently said. He is a friend of Israel, as are British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof, Italian, that's a funny name, Italian Prime Minister Giorgio Meloni, and many others who have joined them from within the ranks of Europe's most outstanding and important cabinet ministers and leaders. So, yeah, that's, I mean, you talk about making yourself a pariah within Israel. That is the thing you're not allowed to say, that no, they're not anti-Semites, they're just criticizing us for our conduct. That, you're not allowed to say that in Israel. Their go-to whenever they get criticism was, well, you're anti-Semitic. They said the ICC was anti-Semitic. Any organization,
everyone's anti-Semitic. The
Right.
UN, everybody, they're uniquely, especially these organizations that are very, for lack of a better word, woke.
Right.
You know, but uniquely for some reason they just are anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They bend over backwards to embrace every other marginalized group, but Jews, that's where they draw the line for some reason.
Exactly. What was Rabbi Shmuley? We just covered it. Rabbi Shmuley turned on someone. I forget who it was. I forget it was here on the Jimmy Dore show. Who was like a friend of Israel up until the point where they say this has gone too far. How dare you, Jew hater? Like, that's their go-to. So to say, actually, no, these world leaders who are now considering punitive measures against us, no, they're not doing it out of anti-Semitism. They're doing it because of our conduct. And this is later on in the piece. He concludes, "It is time to halt before we are all banished from the family of nations." Well, it's too late for that, I think. "And are
Yes.
summoned to the
That
International
shouldn't say.
Criminal Court for war crimes with no good defense. Enough is enough." So here's
Yep.
another piece of this interview.
That would be the great irony.
Yes.
Israelis at Nuremberg.
Exactly. Yes, that would be the great irony, of course. So here he is. Here's some more of his interview with Piers Morgan.
They want to see the Palestinians out of Gaza in order to resettle there. They don't want to see them deported because they want to prepare the ground for a Trump Tower hotel, as maybe some interpreted statements of President Trump to mean. They want it because they want to resettle there, and this is part of their grand design. They want to do the same in the West Bank. Already now they are inspiring.
Oh, yeah.
The Hilltop youth, which I call the atrocious youth, for almost daily attacks against Palestinians in the West Bank, Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank. And they are burning their groves, olive groves. They are burning their homes. They are taking people. They are killing people. This is totally obnoxious and something that can't be tolerated. And unfortunately, it's tolerated because the fact is that it continues, and in most cases, the ones that are arrested are the victim Palestinians, is not the Israeli attackers. And this is part of what I am campaigning against. Now, question that you have outlined is whether Bibi is captive by these guys. He's willingly captive. It's not something that he's fighting against, that he's trying to stop. He is willingly captive by these messianic, extreme fundamentalist right-wingers, supporters of Jewish terror, because it's true that this is probably the only escape he has from what awaits to him, but also because the fact is that for the last 15 years, Netanyahu was the guy that ignored the Palestinian Authority, which was a potential partner for peace negotiations, and was supporting Hamas, the financing of Hamas through Qatar, but with the agreement, support, and cooperation of the Prime Minister of Israel.
Says that too. That too.
All right. So, I mean, he didn't call it the Greater Israel Project, but he described it.
Oh, yeah. He's saying what they're doing. He's saying what they want, that they want to just cleanse that land and occupy that land. I forget the name of his party. It's the center-left party. So he's been a political opponent of Netanyahu for a while, and they indicted him on bribery charges because he was mayor of Jerusalem before he was prime minister. So, he's on the shit list of the current government, so he's probably never thrilled with them to begin with. So this is what you mean. This is what when we say there are no real liberal Israelis, this is what I mean, because this is about as close as you can get. A guy who up until now has been making excuses for their conduct in Gaza, but the dam is breaking when guys like this come on and say, talk about another thing you're not supposed to talk about in Israel, of course, is the Netanyahu suitcases of cash into Qatar with the propping up of Hamas in the first place. So this all goes to say that I do think, you start to see when you talked about in the last segment, there's a coming collapse of Israel. This is what that looks like when these politicians, when major political leaders start coming out and just ravaging not just the main war narrative in terms of war strategy, but start talking about how actually, no, not everybody who criticizes us is anti-Semitic, right? We can't just yell anti-Semite at people when they criticize our conduct. It is starting to come apart, and he's been making the rounds on a lot of different networks. He was on CNN, and so he is expressing, I think, a sort of schism that it's all relatively new since this aid blockade, And it is absolutely maddening that it took that to cause this, but it did.
I mean,
because
it's not even the first time they've done it.
It's not even the first time they've done it, but it's the first time they sustained it for 11 straight months. And the thing about the aid blockade is there's no human shields argument, because you're not killing them with bombs. You're just denying basic needs for a country, half of which are children. And so I thought that was definitely worth showing and worth getting into a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, daily they're just, performing for the world. They're the psychopathic nature and the criminal nature of the state. And more, the world is coming to the conclusion that we've been arguing from the beginning. Does Israel have a right to exist in its current form? Of course it does not.
Right.
Did apartheid South Africa have a right to exist? I know we have some viewers who might argue those were the good old days. But I think most people would say, no, of course not. When I see, frankly, this is the first thing I've seen some of the libs try to virtue signal off of, the Colorado thing. Okay, and of course, even for the cause, we do not support that kind of action. It's counterproductive in and of itself. We do not support that. But do I feel bad for people who march in support of genocide? No. There's no two sides in a genocide. If you're out there marching for that, you should rethink your values, which does not in any way justify that person's actions. But it's certainly not something that I would feel a need to signal my support for those people. What are you supporting?
Right.
What are you supporting? Like, why would you support these are sick people that you're out there supporting this? They're sick. They're brainwashed at best.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course they are. Of course they are. And but to your point, what Gabor Mate was telling us about, because he said, we have to reckon with the fact that nothing we've done, none of our activism, none of our journalism, none of it has saved a single finger of a single Palestinian child.
Right.
He said, that is cause for frustration, but it's not justification for despair and disengagement, because
Right.
there's a long-term project as well. And these are all indicators that the arc of history is bending towards some kind of justice. And the what makes events like in Colorado and like at the embassy so destructive is that they, in addition to being terrible in their own right, it's always terrible to attack civilians, obviously, but they disrupt that long-term project, because those are the kinds of things that set you back, especially when they happen very often, because that's how you turn the public against you. Now, that has not happened in these two instances, because the public, meaning the pro-Palestine movement, has been very smart about saying, we disavow that. Right? Nobody's out there trying to excuse that. Nobody's, and because they know they have to. The pro-Palestine movement is a persecuted movement. When you're a persecuted movement, you have to be very strategic about how you engage.
Right.
And they are. They are. At all of the pro-Palestine protests I've been to, I have not heard anti-Semitism from the pro-Palestine people.
It's
Nothing.
always...
I've never heard aggression. I've never seen aggression. I'm not out there as much as a lot of people, but I'm out there more than some. I've been to a handful of these things, and I have not seen anything amounting to the kind of risk and danger that the media tries to stick on that movement. And this is why, because you have to think, okay, the tragedy of this, and this is part of the wisdom of what Gabor was talking about, like, we have to be honest with ourselves that what we are doing is not saving people in real time. And that is a really horribly bitter pill to have to swallow. But it's key to understanding that that's no excuse to give up, and that there's a long-term project here of justice and liberation as well. And lashing out, the kind of lashing out that happens at the embassy in Colorado, assuming, that's the official story is the story, which we can go down that road another time.
That's a whole other thing.
Right. That's a whole other thing. But that those are the kinds of things that sabotage the long-term project, which actually is it is actually feasible. It is actually an attainable goal to get justice for this long term.
Right.
So anyway, that's what I got to say about that.
Well, not say that's the activist gig, man. That's
Right.
the activist gig. You're going to be out ahead of the powerful institutions in your society, and your job is to build momentum against their agenda to such a degree that they cannot continue in their course of action. That's the gig, man. That's the gig. By its nature, you're always going to be ahead of the curve, and you're always going to experience the relief, but also the frustration of not seeing what you've been saying for years become the general consensus until a lot of unnecessary suffering has occurred.
Yes, of course. Andy Gardner, thanks for the $10. The world needs Hasbro Hal now more than ever. Love from Milwaukee. You know what made Milwaukee famous, right? I mean, aren't they famous for a few different things? I know they brew a lot of beer in Milwaukee.
Hogs.
Yeah. Shai Guevara, thanks for the 20 pounds. These are the noises you make when you know you've been caught. Bang to rights and are looking for a plea deal. Can't let Zionists get out of this by sacrificing Netanyahu. The whole system is responsible. It has to go, absolutely. Sailor Jerry Swallow, thank you for the $2 Canadian. Appreciate that very much. All right, folks, we are going to head over to Rumble. In just a minute, I'm going to take a few more Rumble rants on this side, and then we will head over there after a 5-minute intermission. But start heading over there now. We have 2 segments on Sudan and the Ukraine. Sudan and Ukraine, the Ukraine war, so make sure you head over there. We are not done with the show. These are 2 of, we think, the most urgent segments of the day, some of them at least. So please head over there and catch them live. We will clip them for YouTube, but we're doing them over on Rumble to avoid any
too hot for YouTube.
Any age-restricted, regulations that we might run into if we put some of that here. So dudissidents.com/Rumble. We will see you over there in just a few minutes. I'm going to knock out some of these here. Matthew Miller reminds us all of why we should never accuse a weasel of having morals. Yes. I want to suck your blood libel, Count Smirk. Thank you, Eric Cuso. Appreciate that. Artie Blarty Fart Blast as a spokesperson for the Genghis Khan administration. I did have private reservations about disemboweling political opponents. Thank you. All righty. We are going to head over there right now. dudissidents.com/Rumble. That takes you to this very live stream. Thank you, Jake, for setting that up. Thank you to all of our YouTubers. Before we leave YouTube world, we do have 792 likes over there. That's good for one of these. Alrighty, folks. We're going to take a 5-minute break while you guys get yourself situated over on the Rumble side. If Rumble is blacked out in your region, we are live on X as well and will remain there. Excuse me. Andy Gardner says, what made Milwaukee famous has made a loser out of me. Jerry Lee Lewis. Thank you, Andy Gardner. Appreciate that. That's where I was going. All right, folks. dudissidents.com/Rumble. Please start following over there, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Until then, thanks for being here for the first part of the show. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.